Hello and welcome to the Amateur Rugby Podcast, here to help soothe your Sunday morning hangover with some wonderful rugby chat about the amateur elements of the game. I'm your host, Tim Tunnicliff, and this introductory episode is going to tell you a little bit about me and a lot about the podcast and what you can expect in the coming weeks. So I thought I'd start off with just a brief history of my involvement in rugby throughout the years. I started off when I joined senior school, which was Pates Grammar School in Cheltenham, Gloucestershire, and I played all the way through school there and was lucky enough to play for some representative school sides, the southwest of England. And then onwards after school, I joined Cheltenham Colts, which was an incredibly successful team at the time. We won almost every game we played back then, and it was the start of my club rugby career, which was a great time, meeting loads of new people and enjoying the social side of rugby, which up until then really had just been, absent really from school rugby. We'd play our game and that would be it. But culture rugby changed all that. Playing drinking games in the bar afterwards and having a real good time, but also playing some of the best rugby that I've ever been involved with. This was before the professional era. The game was very different back then, but I look back on it incredibly fondly. And after culture rugby, I moved up to London, and there were a few potential clubs I could have gone and played for, but I ended up at Old Colfians with really just a mate of a mate, which is, I think, one of the best reasons to join a rugby club. We had a brilliant time at Old Colfians, winning London won and made it all the way into the National Leagues, which was incredible for a completely amateur club such as ourselves in the early years of professionalism, when teams like Cornish Pirates were coming up through the league. I stayed at Old Colfians for quite some time, 9 seasons I think in all, and the glory days kind of came and went, and as we started slipping down the leagues and the players that had been part of my that real core of that championship winning team started retiring or stopping playing, rugby became very unenjoyable for me, and I was on the brink of giving up when a chance conversation ended up with me appearing at Blackheath for the start of the 2007 season. And I had a brilliant time at Blackheath. I didn't quite, I played plenty of first team games, but I never quite nailed down a first choice spot. So I moved on to Esher, where I was fortunate. Well, I picked a time when they had a massive front row crisis in terms of injuries. So I got my foot in the door there and had a brilliant 2.5 seasons there, including winning National 1 and playing in the Championship. And then just to finish off my career, I had a season at Ealing, which was a real roller coaster of a season, which we ended up winning the league. But I think we drew 3 games, won a couple of others with the last kick on the last play of the game, and it was a phenomenal experience. So I played throughout most of the divisions, or a good portion of divisions in English rugby, from level 6 all the way up to level 2. And after finishing my playing career, I jumped straight into coaching back at Old Colfians, where I'd spent 10 previous seasons in total. And I did that for 3 years, and there was lots of it that I enjoyed. I loved still being part of the game. I loved having the job of thinking about the game more deeply and leading a team and leading a squad. But ultimately, I don't think it really suited my personality to be a head coach. So I dropped out of the game at that point, and it's been 3 years now that I've been out of the game. So this will bring me on to the reason why I really started this podcast. So as I just mentioned, really, playing rugby was really the cornerstone of my life. In many ways, my entire identity was wrapped up in being a rugby player. And after retirement, I tried the coaching, but it didn't really sit too comfortably with my personality. So I jumped into a world of travel, which continues to be amazing, and I've enjoyed traveling around the world for the last 3 years. But the yearning to be involved with rugby in some way has just grown over time. So I've been looking for this way of combining rugby, being involved in the game of rugby somehow, but also being free to travel and move around the globe as I wish. And having become really infatuated with podcasts in recent years, it seemed obvious to me that this was a way to get back into the game, talk about things that aren't widely being discussed, as well as a way of reconnecting with many people from my rugby past. I want the podcast to promote playing the game at any level, and also to encourage people to get involved in their local clubs in any capacity. Okay, so this is called the Amateur Rugby Podcast, and here's what it won't be. It won't be a weekly update about what's happening in the latest games. It won't be any analysis on a week-to-week basis of playing performances or, Premiership games or internationals or World Cup or anything like that. There's plenty of really good rugby podcasts out there, and if you're not listening to them, I suggest you do, because there's some really good ones. But what it will be is it will be a show about the amateur ethos of the game. It doesn't necessarily mean I'll be speaking to people who are purely amateur or even discussing games that are purely amateur. It's the ethos of the amateur game that I'm trying to capture. And from my experience, that is still very much in existence. Now, this is something that's brand new for me. I've never ever recorded a podcast before. I've never done anything like this. I haven't broadcast anything or recorded anything like this in any capacity. So this is going to be a massive learning journey for me as well, and I'd like you to come with me on that journey. I've been on Facebook Live recording some pre-interview little clips and some of the process that I've been going on so far in terms of software to use and social media promotion and how to host the podcast and choosing the audio equipment and all kinds of stuff like this. So if you find that interesting, jump on Facebook, and they're on YouTube now as well. So I've got a YouTube channel for these things to live on. But in terms of this journey, I thought long and hard about which order I should release the podcast in. And I thought at first, maybe tactically it would be a good idea to release maybe an interview with maybe the most famous person or the person with the biggest network or the interview that I thought went the best. But what I've decided to do is actually just stay true to the order that I recorded them in, because I think that will show the journey and the progression. And I think there's things that come up in some early conversations which then come up in later ones which I refer to. So the first episode that's going to be released on the 8th of September is with my brother, Chris Tunnicliff. It's a good chat that we had, and we got into some interesting things from back when we were kids and stuff like that. And the second one was the one I did a few days later with my good friend Matt Townsend. And again, that's another great conversation. And then we'll move on from there, literally in the order that I recorded them, because I think that's just going to be the most natural way. And I think hopefully it will show the progression of improvement throughout the podcast. I think hopefully the production quality will improve, and hopefully my skills as a presenter and an interviewer will improve. That's the plan going forwards. If you'd like to come along for the ride, then I'll be active on Twitter at @AmRugbyPodcast. That's at @AmRugbyPodcast, where I like to be active during matches, and just joining the conversation about what's going on at the current time, and hopefully share lots of interesting news and items that are about the amateur ethos of the game, because it's still out there. There's still plenty of it, and we need to share it and celebrate it when we see it. There's a Facebook page as well, which will feature plenty of Facebook Live videos. That is also at Am Rugby Podcast on Facebook, or just search for Amateur Rugby Podcast in Facebook and it will pop right up. Of course, I'd love amazing 5-star reviews and subscriptions on Apple Music, iTunes, or wherever you get your podcasts. And lastly, and most importantly, next time you're down your local club, just mention it to someone during a chat about rugby. Just get it out there, spread the word. If you're enjoying what you're hearing, then it would be great to have some more support. Okay, with that being said, the first episode will be with you on the 8th of September. But until then, get out and play.